Good morning. First of all, I want to say good morning to everyone and welcome to our Antelope Valley Stakeholders Convening. If you have not done so already, please sign in. Our link is listed in the chat box. So we want to make sure that you sign in, and the information and resources that we hear today will be emailed to you. This is our immediate agenda for today. We have our redistricting, our data collection, and our power mapping and announcements. Before we get started, I want to have a few moments of silence for those who have been recently slain in mass shootings. If you pray, say a prayer for them and the families that are suffering right now, the communities. If we just have a silent moment to reflect and just remember those who are going through rough times right now because of this. Okay,
Darrell, I think we're going to go to the next speaker because Kipp is going to be joining us shortly. So if we could go to the next speaker.
Okay, that's perfect. Christine, we're going to go with Christine Alsco, who's going to give us some updates on our C3 surveys and data collection. Christine, let me stop sharing and I will hand this over
to everybody. Yes, I have some slides for you all. Give me one moment. So let me start from the beginning. Here we go. As Darrell shared, my name is Christine Alasco, and I know most of you have seen me before already, so nice to see everybody this morning, and thank you all for coming to our meeting today. I'm the Children's Bureau Place-Based Systems Manager, so I help with the data, the evaluations, and just anywhere I can support Best Start and all of you. So let's just jump right in. So since this is kind of the end of the fiscal year, I thought we would give you all a little update. This is so exciting to us. So we have 378 active Best Start members of our Best Start AV. And out of those, 163 are actually new this year, which is just really incredible. And in the next slide, I'm going to show you kind of where the new people are coming from, but that is just so exciting. We've been really, really pushing for, growing our network because the more people we have in our network, the more people in our community we can support. So this is just awesome. And then we also have 68 active agencies or organizations. So that is people, that's people like CCRC, right? AVPH, just anyone who is in the community, in an agency, part of the network. So that is awesome. We're excited. We want to keep growing in the next fiscal year, but for right now, we're just super pumped about where we're at with that. And so this is where people have been coming from over the past year. Most of our new people are from the community, right? Just regular people from our community, the parents, families, these are the people who we really want because that is the heart of our network. We have a couple of people who came from the education sector, a couple people from government sector, a couple people from healthcare sector, right? And then we also have a lot of people from the nonprofit sector. And that is, like I said, a lot of the agencies and those partners from there. And then a lot of this graph will show you what type of meetings and groups our network is participating in. So as you can see, we have a lot of people who participate in our regular Best Start meetings. We have a lot of people in the convening, which is what we are doing today, and the special engagements, which are like trainings, like when we've done Zoom trainings or implicit bias trainings, our health related specific kind of workshops, all of that stuff would be like a special engagement. So we're just kind of doing a little assessment of like, okay, what does our network like to participate in? And that's kind of what we're seeing. We did have a lot of people in our first inaugural Policy Leadership Academy, and that's really exciting. Tracy did a really good job organizing that, and we know we got some good feedback on that. So we're excited to move forward with the next Policy Leadership Academy later in, I think it's August. So if you're interested, let Tracy know, and she will get you that information. And then we did have some Best Start committees. We haven't quite revived them yet, but so we do know some people participated in that, and we are stay tuned for like that revival as we go forward. So what else about data? So one other thing that we wanted to share with you is that we've been doing a little bit of like an analysis on what other networks and coalitions are out here in the Antelope Valley. So the Antelope Valley, the one thing I have to say is very collaborative, right? Everybody is works together really, really nicely. And we have so many amazing initiatives that exist in the Antelope Valley that are all kind of working towards similar goals, which is improving outcomes in the community. So some of them are focused around like the new Violence Prevention Coalition. That is really exciting. We have health related ones, mental health related coalitions, like even like the Smoke Free Coalition, that's really specific, but we also have broader ones. So we were just thinking, me here at the Best Start team, but also with some partners that are outside of the of staff here, we were just thinking, okay, there's a lot of coalitions, and we know a lot of people are going to a lot of these meetings, right? And so how can we kind of like align them if they have similar goals, right? We don't want to reinvent the wheel at every meeting, and we don't want people to have to attend 20 meetings to get the same information. So how can we align that? So that's something we are working on. Like, I don't have answers for you today, but that is something we are thinking about, because us at Best Start, like, we kind of want to be the glue that kind of holds a lot of these coalitions together. And so we've implemented Group Site, which I know we talked about last time, but we'll talk about it again. So Group Site would be like an online network that can disseminate information. People can chat, people can post flyers, job listings, anything like that, you know, that's related to your coalition. We also want to make sure that we're sharing notes from these meetings, like the minutes from these meetings, and just really making sure that we're being efficient with a lot of these coalitions. So it's just something we've been thinking about, and I think we'll update you as we go forward when it comes to this, because nothing has been like implemented per se, but it's just something we know. Like, we know you all are busy, and we know you all are attending a lot of meetings. So we just want to put that out there. Let's see next. Okay, so we have the collective capacity survey, and I know a lot of you might have been getting, you know, countless emails from me, from Tracy, Darrell, from UCLA, like, we know. And so this is a survey. The purpose of it was to assess the health of our network, right? Because without our network, we can't achieve the goals that we want to achieve. So we implemented the C3 survey. We launched it a few months, like, I want to say 3 months ago now. So data collection is wrapping up. If you haven't taken the survey and you really, really want to, like, I guess, send me an email. But other than that, data collection is wrapping up. And then UCLA is our team that is going to be analyzing the results and then creating a report for us, which of course we will share back with you when that is all final. I don't exactly know when that will be, but within the next few months, that's when it's going to be. So again, if you really, really like want to take this survey and you haven't gotten a chance to, let me know. It is a little bit lengthy. So that is kind of a concern, but if you have the time, it's like, you know, 20 minutes, and you still really want to take it, let me know. And lastly, we have a few additional data projects that are coming down the pike. So we have partnered with Advancement Project California, and they will be helping us with something really exciting called the State of the Child report. So if you are familiar with like the State of the Child, I think in Orange County, they release a report for all of Orange County. side note, when I was one of my first like internships was with the Girl Scouts of the USA, and we did a state of the girl report for each state. Very, yeah, meta, but okay, so this is very similar. So state of the child. So we want to focus just on the Antelope Valley, because the Antelope Valley has been ignored when it comes to like data, when it comes to research, when it comes to our community and how we're doing. So we really want to shine a light on how our community is doing. But the best part about this is that it's going to be collaborative. So our community, any one of you, any one of our parents, anybody who is interested, when we begin in June, well, it is June. Wow, that's great. I think we begin in July, actually. I can't believe it's June. Is so whatever measures or indicators in our community that we're interested in. So whether it's health, right? Whether it's mental health, because I already kind of know, like we know what people are interested in because of previous meetings that we've had. But so we know people are interested in housing is a major topic in the Antelope Valley. Health and mental health, especially access to those, are major topics. And child safety is another one. So those are things that the community, when we meet to come together about this, we will decide, okay, so what are those topics that we want to look at? And then how are we going to look at it? And it's going to be super collaborative with the Advancement Project leading it. And then when we come to, okay, so then what are the findings and how do we want to share it with the community? Again, it will be a collaborative decision. So this has been done in the Best Start regions of Long Beach and Wilmington. And it turned out, you know, amazing. The reports are amazing. And then they even put it like on a website so that all of their partners have access to it whenever they want. And it's not something that like Best Start is going to just keep and hold, and we're just going to put it away on a shelf. Like, no, this is going to be totally open for everyone to use. Whether you're in a school district or anything like that, you can use it if you want to use it to, maybe you want to use it to write a grant next year, right? Something like that, totally open for all of that. So that's coming. And if you want to participate, we will be putting out kind of like a call to participate in that, and just kind of in that process of, okay, so what are we looking at and all of that. And then the second thing is we are thinking about doing a parent survey in the fall. So I recently helped an organization, well, not, it's through Children's Bureau, but in Anaheim, do a parent survey. And we wanted to see if the Antelope Valley is also interested in doing a parent survey, because one thing we're finding is now that COVID is, like, I'm not going to say it's over, but now that COVID has like kind of made its impact, what are the changes that families are needing now, right? Like, so we know the needs have changed for families. For example, this is just an example, but one thing we know, okay, so before the pandemic, a lot of kids would use a computer lab in the library. Now, a lot of the kids have their own computers that were given to them from the school because of remote learning. So computer labs aren't necessarily as important. So like, that's an example, it's a simple one, but what are the needs that families have now? And they might be different from 2 years ago. So that's the purpose of this survey. Also just kind of like, you know, how are people doing? Like things like that, right? So if you want to participate in that survey, we already have like a bunch of questions that that we've used, but we want to make sure that they are, you know, appropriate and relevant to the Antelope Valley specifically. And if your organization wants something even more specific, or like your sector, like let's say school versus, you know, might have different questions than like a health organization, we can work with you on that as well if you want to get like a little bit more nitty gritty. So if you are interested, I'm going to put my email in the chat and my phone number if you want to send me a message saying like, hey, I'm interested in the parent survey and participating in this because we want that information. That would be really exciting. And we just hope that that we get a lot of good feedback, because without kind of like learning from what the community needs, then we're just kind of spinning our wheels and we're not necessarily offering relevant programs, if that makes sense. So I think that's all that I have for you today. Are there any questions for me about the data, about the surveys, anything that I shared?
you can put your question in the chat or raise your hand. It's good information that Christine presented. So we kind of know where we are and what we have to do. So if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or just kind of come off mute and ask.
Or if you just have comments.
Yeah, our comment. Pilar said, great presentation, Christine.
Thank you, Pilar.
Okay. Well,
No,
then
then
go
I'll
ahead.
pass it back to you, Darrell.
Okay, then we're going to continue on, and I am going to turn this back over to Tracy LaMonica for now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have an excellent presentation coming up, so pleased to present Kipp Mueller to talk about redistricting. Kipp Mueller is a civil rights attorney and pro bono asylum attorney, as well as the regional director for Region 10 of the California Democratic Party. He is also a legal advisor for the NAACP and serves on the Los Angeles County Bar Association Access to Justice Committee, where he successfully fought for more legal aid services in the Antelope Valley. He also sits on the board of directors for the Consumer Attorneys of California. My pleasure to introduce Mr. Kipp Mueller.
Thanks so much. Good to see everybody. I have some dogs running around in my office, so if there's barking going on, I closed my door, but it can be a little chaotic over here. Thank you all for taking the time this morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the introduction. And I'm talking about a totally different topic. This is about redistricting, which just happened in 2020, will be happening again in 2030. It is one of the most important fundamental processes in our entire democratic system. And it's something that everybody has to be aware of and find a way to participate in, because if you're fighting for communities, whichever nonprofits organizations you're with, those communities need representation when it comes to these redistricting decisions that are being made. And it's incumbent upon us to make sure that they have those that representation. Let me share my screen and we can talk a little bit about redistricting and how it works. And then I'm happy to answer questions as well. So, and this is from 2020. This just happened, as I mentioned. So actually, let me hold on one second. Sorry. Okay. So you can ignore that. What is redistricting? So every 10 years, we have a census. We figure out who's living where. And then we draw new boundaries for our congressional districts, for our state Senate districts, for our state assembly districts, and a whole host of other districts. Counties do it. There's the Board of Equalization. There's a lot. And so what district you're in now may be different than it was a year ago, because we just went through this process. The idea is that, as it says here, communities change, people are born, die, and move. And especially we know in the Antelope Valley that people are moving from Los Angeles at a really high rate and have been for quite some time into the Antelope Valley. I'm sure you've seen housing prices impacted by that. So people move around, and it's important that the maps don't stay stagnant, because what might happen is certain communities lose their voices. Others have a disproportionately loud voice in our political system. Yeah, okay, that's enough of that. Let's see, why is redistricting important? So redistricting is really important because, as we'll see in a second, it ensures that everybody's voices are heard. And oftentimes you see, especially in other states, where legislators choose their own districts. So state legislatures will create the districts for their state. They'll often find ways to ensure that they win. And usually it comes at the expense of communities of color. What they're trying to do is find ways to minimize the voices of communities of color by different processes that we'll look at in a second, that are sort of strategies that they use in order to do that. And it's important, of course, to be aware of them so that we can counteract them and ensure that that doesn't take place. Okay. So we talked a bit about this. This is okay. We can do, okay. So why independent? So first off, let me explain briefly. As of about 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago, we established a neutral redistricting commission in California. And what that means is that our state legislature and our governor does not make the decision on how the maps will look. It is an independent commission comprised of equal Democrats, Republicans, and some no party preference people who aren't in the political system in a major way. I mean, everybody to some degree is involved in or impacted by politics, but they aren't politicians. They're professors, statisticians, economists, whatever they may be. And so they draw the districts, and it matters a lot because you can see what can happen here if you have people with a conflict of interest drawing the districts. They can empower themselves at the expense of others. So this is an example of how gerrymandering works. By the way, the term gerrymandering comes from a guy last name Jerry, who was drawing districts to empower him and his party. I don't know, over 100 years ago. This was on the East Coast, somewhere, Maryland or somewhere. And he was drawing districts that were so bizarre looking that they looked like salamanders. You know, they had no like rhyme or reason other than that, let's cut this community out, bring this one in, doing that. And so the term became gerrymandering. This is an example of how it can work. So let's say we have 50 people total in California, okay? 60% are orange, which, you know, Democrats, since we're in California, we can say these are the two parties, essentially think of it like that. 60% orange, 40% purple. Okay, so the question is, how do we divide these people into congressional districts, let's say? So these are ways to do it fairly. You can see the lines right here represent a district. So here's one example. They put 3 districts that are just all orange, 100% orange party, and 2 districts that are 100% purple party. You end up with a total of 3 districts that are orange, 2 that are purple. That fairly reflects this 60% orange, 40% purple ratio. This is fair. The other way to do it is put orange and purple people into, which is the way it actually happens. They do share districts, but the way that it turns out, you'll see some have more purple than orange and some have more orange than purple. The way these play out, there's 3 that end up having majority orange, 2 majority purple, and that fairly reflects what our state has in terms of the 2 parties of orange and purple. Over here is how you rig the system. So this one way is called cracking, it's called. So you take the purples and you separate them such that they're never a majority in any of the districts. Every single district has more orange than purple. And as a result, even though only 60% of these squares are orange controls 100% of the seats. This is what happens in a lot of states around the United States. It impacts our Congress. It impacts us in California because parties will seize seats that they shouldn't have. And obviously what Congress decides impacts the entire country. So it does impact us, and we don't have a lot of say over it because it's controlled by states, how these processes work. Here's another way to do it, uniquely drawing these districts in odd ways such that this is where the purple party is trying to gain power. They divided up the oranges such that even though they're 60% of the total squares, they only control 2 of the 5 seats. So that's gerrymandering. Okay. I'll move a little quicker through this. So in California, our Constitution has 6 criteria that the commission considers when determining how to draw the districts. Number 1, they all have to be roughly equal population. 2 is they have to comply with the California Voting Rights Act. And that means that they have to ensure that minorities have an equal opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. It kind of goes back to what we're talking about with the cracking and packing, making sure that communities of color are not being divided up such that they lose their political voice. That's in our Constitution. And but it also requires enforcement. It requires people calling into the commission and making sure that that's actually happening and that enough districts are Voting Rights Act districts and properly give voice to communities of color. Contiguity just means that the districts have to be drawn so that the district is connected to each other. It just has to do with it. So the salamander thing I was talking about tends to mean that somebody's cheating. You know, they go like draw all around, let's leave this community out and move over here and do this. So contiguity just means point A to point B in the district. If I pick a point and another point and I go in a straight line between those 2 points, it should all be in the district. I shouldn't be leaving and re-entering the district, because that's a sign that you're not cheating the district. Fourth is communities of interest. Communities of interest is a very vague term. It can mean the interests of the people who live in a city, a community. It could be, a large part of this district has concerns about broadband cable access, and that's a big problem. There's a community of interest about getting more broadband cable access. Or the 5, the 5 heading south is awful. We all want to fix that. The 14 is awful. Stuff like that. And then 5th and 6th, 5 is geographically compact. So smaller, more compact districts as opposed to giant districts. And we'll look at a counterexample of that right here in the Antelope Valley. And then finally, nesting districts. This just means when there's 2 assembly districts, they're supposed to sit roughly in a Senate district, because Senate districts are about double the size of the assembly districts at the state level. Okay, these are all the different levels of government that are involved in the redistricting process, school districts, water districts. This is the history of how we have a neutral redistricting commission in California. It was a proposition. Before the proposition, legislators drew lines, and again, huge conflict of interest. Of course, there's political back and forth going on of, fine, if you take this part of this district, then I'm going to take this part, and we'll work together to keep our power. It doesn't matter which party you're a part of. Everybody does it. Everybody who's in power wants to stay in power. And so it's why you shouldn't have those people. This is my commentary, but you shouldn't have the same people who are representing districts be drawing the districts. And we don't have that in California, fortunately. How they're selected is a really long process. These are the 14 members of the commission for 2020, equal Democrats and Republicans. I'll just note that, and I'm not commenting on whether this is right or wrong, but Democrats outnumber Republicans in California about 2 to 1. So the fact that Republicans have the same number of representatives on this board as Democrats do means that Republicans actually have more representation. If I'm a Republican in California, I'm not, but if I was, then I would have louder voices, a louder voice on this commission than a given Democrat, because there's more Democrats than Republicans in California. So it's just worth noting. But the idea, of course, was keep it as neutral and fair, across the board as possible. So that's how it was designed. During the process of drawing the districts, there's public input. It's constantly happening. So really you want to, this won't be till 2030, but keep it in mind. You'll really want to write letters and be involved in the process as they're drawing the districts, and represent your communities, your organizations, what you guys do. If it's foster youth, whoever it is, everybody's voice. And if you're not speaking up, there's other people speaking up that have competing interests with you. And you just have to keep that in mind. It's in my view, an obligation for all of us who are fighting for certain communities to be engaged in this process. Anyway, okay, we can move through this. A lot of this has to do with the actual redistricting process. Let's take a look at, or in 2020, what was taking place. Let's take a look at our districts here in the Antelope Valley, and then I'll pass it to Tracy after we do that. So we ended up with a different congressional district than we had before. This is Congressional District 27 that we are a part of now, most of us, I'm assuming, on this call. And it was District 25. It used to be that part of Lancaster was Kevin McCarthy's district, if you're aware, and was carved out of the Antelope Valley. There was successful push in 2020 to unite the Antelope Valley. Common interests, common communities should have one, louder political voice, and it was successful. We also no longer have Simi Valley as part of this district, and there were a lot of organizations speaking out about why Simi Valley has very different interests than the Antelope Valley. And those voices, fortunately, well, I'm sorry, this is my take, were heard, and we now have a district with, I would say it's more compact. It better follows the criteria of the commission in our constitution, and this is what it looks like. It's 41.3% Democrat, 29.6% Republican, 21.8% no party preference, which is a few points more for Democrats than the previous district had. And that's the district. Okay. Congressional District 23, which some used to be the district that came into the Antelope Valley, now follows the Kern County line right here. No longer makes its way into Los Angeles County. This is a district maybe some folks are part of. But it comes up into eastern side of Antelope Valley just a little bit, but it's mostly down in Pasadena, Altadena area. State Senate, this district, full disclosure, is the one that is very similar to the one I ran for in the last cycle. And it changed a little bit. It no longer has the Apple Valley on the east side of it that it had before over here. It added all of Santa Clarita. So the state Senate seat previously it cut through Santa Clarita and now has all of Santa Clarita and not this east side. It's slightly more Democrat voter registration than it was before. It's supposed to be about 5% more Democrat by 2024 than the seat was in 2020. So that's District 23 for the Antelope Valley. State Assembly is very interesting. It does divide the Antelope Valley in two. So the commission basically made a decision that because the Senate and congressional seats properly, keep the Antelope Valley together, that they were comfortable with dividing the Antelope Valley for purposes of the assembly seats. Whether you agree or not, that's what they decided to do. So this is District 39. It's the east side of Antelope Valley. Comes all the way out to the Victor Valley over here, high desert. And it's 47.3% Democrat, 21.7% Republican. So there will be, it's almost certain that there will be a Democrat representing the eastern half of Antelope Valley after 2022, the end of this year. And then, and that's what the district looks like in terms of the cities that are included. The west side of the Antelope Valley is right here. And this district is pretty amazing. It goes from the west side of the Antelope Valley and stretches all the way out. This is the Nevada border and covers all this terrain over here. This is the district we just looked at a second ago that is carved out. This is an awkwardly drawn two districts. You'll notice it doesn't follow the rule I mentioned of contiguity, because if I draw a point from point A to point B, I do not stay within the district. I go right through this district. That's not the way they're supposed to be, but it's not a hard and fast rule. It's just the guidelines they try to meet. So anyways, it is 31% Democrat, 39% Republican. It's very likely to be a Republican seat, which means it's likely that there will be two assembly members in the Antelope Valley. One will be a Republican and one will be a Democrat. I'm not saying with certainty, but that's how it's looking. And that's the drawing of the district again. This district just comes into Phelan and just has a little piece of up where we are. And then comes all the way to Altadena, Pasadena again, similar to the way the Congressional District 28 did. Okay, so that's the districts, and I'll pass it along to Tracy to talk more, and I'll try to scroll as best I can while you go, Tracy, through these next slides.
Thank you, Kipp, and really interesting. I know I'm Kip and I are little political nerds, I know, but I just find all of this so fascinating. This is also, because I created this presentation for everyone, this is where you can actually look up your address and find where you are. Because as Kip mentioned, the east side has changed. So you may think that you're under Lackey if that's your current assemblyman, and it might not be because of the district changing. So I would advise you to go onto the calmatters.org, type in your address, and you can find out who all of your representatives are for congressional, Senate, and Assembly. And that leads me to my the next slide, which is coming up. So we're on the 2nd right now. Next June 7th will be the primary election. So this is really important for everyone here. Next slide. And again, we do not talk about Democrat or Republican. We're just here for informational purpose, which is we have a lot, except for the presidential, we have everyone else running. So you are voting for a United States Senator, you're voting for a congressperson, and these are the people that are at the federal level overseeing the federal entities. And next. We also have a lot of state representatives. So you might be most familiar with the governor, but all of these positions or elected representatives are also running in the June 7th. So you've got the lieutenant governor, treasurer, state assembly. So all of them are running. So again, these are the representatives at the California level. And then we also have counties. So as you may know, we are a part of LA County. They are also running. So we've got a sheriff, an assessor, and numerous judges of the Superior County level. So those are also running. And then finally, you know, the last day to register for the June 7th was May 23rd, which has passed. But you can also register to vote. You can call the hotline, which is important. And also, the next slide, you can actually go into the election office, which the one for the Antelope Valley is in Lancaster. If you're familiar with Lancaster, the AV hospital, it's actually right across the way on 16th Street. So again, any registered voter can go to your county elections office in person and request to receive a vote by mail ballot. And keep in mind that if you've been voting for a long time, such as I know myself, you know, you're kind of probably used to going to that same place every year if you haven't moved. That's changed. So again, keep in mind there's places where you can actually drop your ballot off. There's places where you can go into. You're not tied to that one place. So that's also something to keep in mind. And again, if you haven't received your vote, your ballot, which you should have, I believe they started sending them out on May 9th, then you didn't receive your ballot. So you need to make sure if you're wanting to vote, which we hope you are, to remedy that. And again, also you're looking at lavote.net and then the 1-800 number to contact the elections office for LA. And then finally, thank you so much. Hope that you enjoyed the redistricting and the elections. And I'm going to turn it back to Darrell. And Pilar did have a comment in the chat, which is important. Don't forget to research the judges. I agree. Always research who you want to vote for so that you make that informed decision. So Darrell.
And sorry, Pilar, I was just going to say 100%. And I'm in court all the time arguing for my clients in civil rights cases. And it's really important to me that we pick good people to be in our courtrooms. So thank you for pointing that out too. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kipp and Tracy. Great information. Please take it and do your research and don't forget to vote. Make sure. We're going to continue on. We have another presentation. So let me share my screen. Just a moment.
It took us 3 days to get them. No.
Yes. Our next presenter, and I believe he is here. Carlos, are you with us? We're going for the Center for Nonprofit Management. They will be sharing on network mapping. And I did make you co-host, Carlos. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Could you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so give me a moment. I'm going to share my screen right now.
Okay.
Okay. But good morning, everybody. My name is Carlos Cazares. I'm also joined by Alda Khan from the Center for Nonprofit Management. So we thank you all for taking the time to be with us this morning. I'm going to just quickly go over how many folks here and assist me if I can't see everybody, but how many folks here have done a level of work with Power Maps or have an understanding of what Power Maps is? Just raise your hand with the emoji on the screen, or or just shout out anything, but anybody that's done power mapping. I know Sylvia has her thumbs up. Does anybody else? Pilar? Who else? Dorel? And from anybody that's shared that they've practiced this, would you be willing to share with the kind of collective here of how you've utilized Power Map, or for you, what Power Mapping is? I'll get into it a little bit, but definitely want to hear people's, experience with that. Pilar, how have you used Power Mapping? Not to put you on the spot.
Putting me on the spot. Yeah. Back when I was many years ago, an organizer is really trying to identify where to focus our energies, our assets, so that we can, with limited resources, it's like, how can where are our allies? So just, starting with that. Yeah.
So you used it in terms of like understanding who's kind of playing into any goal or mission or action item that you want. And then it's really about understanding what you could do with the resources you have, right?
Yes.
Great. Sylvia, how about you?
Good morning. We utilized it here out in the Antelope Valley. I think our primary aim was to really get a better understanding, like we said, or who the key players are in our network, but also to then look at where we may have some gaps and who we also have to bring into the table is really what we were looking at.
Right. That's the biggest thing about power mapping is just, it's not only understanding who are the players, but we all on a day-to-day basis have networks that we work within, right? Be it in a level of advocacy, be it in a level of organizing together. And sometimes we get comfortable with our networks, with our circles, right? Because we haven't had to have a tough time and leverage our power sometimes, or even we don't have a tough time in really finding out who we might need to add to this movement. Power mapping really helps us understand where are gaps, who are people that we haven't tapped into, who are people we haven't engaged, right? So thank you for sharing that. One thing I want to ask, right, because I want to make this interactive, and I know I have about 12 minutes, but I think we could get a lot done here in those 12 minutes is, what's a particular issue that we might want to address in the Antelope Valley? I know people will throw out many issues, but I want to just use this as an example today as I walk you through the power mapping, right? What might be a particular issue or a challenge or a policy that folks might want to change, amend in the Valley? Okay, we said homelessness, right? Are folks okay using the issue or challenge of homelessness for this power mapping example? Okay, great. Okay. So yeah, so homelessness, many different forms, right? Be it the lack of housing, right? Be it a public health issue, right? But we'll look at homelessness as a whole, right? And I want us to think about that as I'm presenting this. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to do a couple slides right now. But one thing I want us to think about when we think about power mapping is just what is power mapping? And give me a second. I'm a little slow with this right now. But the what? Power mapping is a tool to be able to analyze positionality and decision-making power, right? If we want to change a policy, if we want to change a situation, we know that there are folks within our communities, within our spaces that have decision-making power to do this, whether it be by a vote, whether it be by striking a pen on paper and creating a new law, there are decision makers, right? So this tool helps us identify people's position and decision-making power. It also helps us identify the roles of relationships and networks and social change work, right? We had a presentation right now on redistricting. And one thing we have to understand is that no matter what, right? Let's say, for instance, we're talking to the people that sit on that committee for redistricting. They might not be elected officials, but they have relationships with people, right? Everybody's human. They have their interests, right? And this power mapping tool helps us understand who are they related to, who are they connected to, and what are their general interests in this work that we're trying to do. So that's kind of like the what. The why. Power mapping helps us reveal avenues of influence available to an organization. Like mentioned earlier, right? We might have limited resources, right? But when we use this tool, we could identify where are those resources that we could tap into that we might not have, right? Power mapping also helps us do visual mapping out relationships between people, organizations, institutions, that help us understand the value and purpose of these relationships. And then lastly, we are in this convening right now, but when this convening is over, we all go into our separate organizations, our separate work. And sometimes we don't have the space or the time to collaborate. And so I always say that using this power mapping tool and having people kind of sit at a table and work at it is essential, because we don't always have that time to be creative or create strategies, right? So that's the biggest thing. How do we power map, right? And we're gonna practice this today together in terms of homelessness, right? But this is kind of just a general process, right? Is that number one, we have to reflect and identify who are the stakeholders, right? Who are the power players? Who are the influencers? And then after we identify folks, we want to do a level of research, right? We all know off the top of our head who certain elected officials are or what side they might lean on in terms of supporting or opposing issues of homelessness. But we have to do deeper research, right? We have to understand, where have these people voted in the past? What's their track record? Who are they aligned with? Who are their interests? Who kind of influences their decision making, and who those influences are, right? So we first reflect and identify stakeholders. We then do research on them to understand who they are and what they do and what they believe in. And then lastly, we map them on the actual power map, okay? So I'm gonna kind of stop right there for the moment. We're gonna practice this, Usually I do an initial workshop called Power Mapping Essentials, where I kind of go through the nuts and bolts of what a power map is, kind of like I did right now. And we did this for the Antelope Valley a while back ago, right? So today I was asked to kind of come back in and practice it and get a little deeper, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of share with you all kind of like a Jamboard. Usually we would do this kind of in a conference room together, right? We'd put a big white Post-it paper on the wall. We give everybody Post-its and we kind of go at it, right? But we've had to kind of adjust that during the pandemic. And so we were able to create a Jamboard. So let me pull that up. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. And then what I'll do too, Sylvia, is that I'm also going to share this link with the participants here, so that if we create something, we'll actually give it to folks to keep building off of it, right? But this is essentially a power map that I do with folks, right? And so in this tool, what you see right here, if everybody could see the screen that I'm scrolling, is that there's kind of like a line divided in the middle, right, of this power map. And this is a neutral line. Anybody that you would put here is neither for or against what you're trying to accomplish, right? They're just neutral. They don't really have they don't incline to anything, right? And so this is kind of like this bold line that you see in the middle, right? Anybody that you place on this map to the left is supportive of your goal, right? And so what I want to do first, and we might not get through all of this, but as long as we start practicing this, I'm more than willing to follow up with this group and kind of walk you through this process. But in terms of homelessness, what is something that we want to accomplish as an Antelope Valley? And you could throw it in the chat, and anybody could help me if I haven't seen it in the chat, right? End it. Okay. In what form, right? Let's say we have a year or 2 years to address something of homelessness. What might be a goal that we have? And it could be a SMART goal too, more affordable housing. Is there any amount of affordable housing that we might want to advocate for? People having housing which is affordable. Okay, let's get a little bit more specific. What might be a goal? That a homeless shelter, okay? Build tiny homes, okay? What else? Affordable housing for tiny homes. Okay. More hotel vouchers, better hotel conditions as interim measure, authorized vouchers for TAY, as well as for families. Okay. So let's say, can we create a goal that says we wanna leverage resources for homelessness? Or Ruth, you're raising your hand. Go for it, Ruth.
Yes, thank you. I work with the unhoused population here in the Antelope Valley, and I can tell you shelters, I'm completely against shelters, because if anything we learned through this pandemic is how dangerous it would have been, a lot worse it would have gotten. So they were a lot safer out in the desert versus being in the shelter. Not only that, the shelters is just mentally it's not good for the unhoused population. But what we need is transitional housing to true affordable housing. We don't have true affordable housing. They're still doing background check. They're still doing credit check. So that's not really true affordable housing. And when we give them vouchers, vouchers have been useless. I've encountered so many individuals with vouchers, but there's no place that are taking those vouchers. So my thing is, and this is what I've been advocating, I'm not even in so much in favor of the tiny homes, but that could be a transitional, moving them into affordable housing, you know, but in the meantime, they still need the wraparound services. We can't just place them in a home and forget about it and say our job is done. No, they need those services. You know, they need the drug and alcohol services. They need the mental services. They need, even the parenting. Not only that, children. Right now, I have 17 children in a hotel, 5 mothers, that they were living under the trenches out in the desert. And, it's been a struggle. It's just a struggle in itself. And I can tell you, when I go to those hotels and I see the children, they don't have any place to get out and play. So that is not a solution, just put them in a hotel, because the children, we're not thinking about the damage that we're doing to them as well. So we need to be very mindful of that, how we're doing it. We need the after school programs. We need to make sure that the kids are getting to school, how they're going to be bused from the hotel to the schools and so forth, things like that.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. I'm gonna move us forward in this, right? Because I got about 5 more minutes. But let's say, for instance, I'm gonna do this as an example, right? I'm gonna put up a post and I'm gonna put our goal is to create tiny homes.
Carlos, just real quick, this is
Yeah.
Tracy. We made up some time, so I think you're okay with time.
Okay.
Okay, so just to let you know.
No worries.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna put tiny homes to transition affordable housing, right? And I might misspell a bunch of stuff right here because I'm doing it with one hand. But let's say this is our goal for right now, okay? Is to leverage tiny homes, right? To transition affordable housing. Let's just say that's our goal, okay? I'm gonna put it up here, all right? Really quickly, if this is our goal, what's the opposition's goal? If we wanna create tiny homes for transitioning of affordable housing to get us to a point, right? Whereas folks are getting tiny homes and they're able to live in somewhat dignity, they're able to transition their life and build a stronger future to be able to get homes eventually or to build out their families, right? But what's the opposition's goal? This is important in power mapping, is really addressing, if we're trying to accomplish this, what's the other side trying to accomplish? What are they trying to do? And I want you to throw your comments in the chat. They want to reject tiny homes, but why? Why? Why zoning? Why land? What's the overall purpose? What's the overall purpose? Why are people doing those things? Why is there a level of zoning, controlling land, opposing, rejecting tiny homes? Money, okay? To build revenue generating establishments, right? Zoning for high cost developers, right? So we would say that people want to profit, right? Is that an agreement that we have? That people want to just maintain status quo, they want to profit, right? So I want, whenever you do a power map, you also want to put the opposition's goal, okay? So for this one, we'll say profit, right? And I want to be very explicit about this. The reason why we make sure that we line up what is our goal, what is their goal, and understand this, for opposition, they could have many goals, right? It could be environmental racism, it could be overall racism, it could be prejudice, it could be profit, it could be all those things. It could be capitalism, right? It could be developers having relationships with elected officials, right? But you want to line up as many opposition goals as you can, because whenever you're trying to figure out who are the power players, who are the decision makers, you want to have a reference, right? We want to have a reference to who are the decision makers and who are folks that are influencing profit in the Antelope Valley, okay? But for right now, I'm going to just leave these two, right? And it might be too small for us to see, so I'll zoom in a little bit, right? But our goal is to create tiny homes to transition affordable housing. Their goal is to have as much profit as possible, to eliminate any use of money for resources for the community so that they could keep the money. We don't know who they are yet, right? But I want us to do this first, right? We're going to kind of flood the chat with this. In terms of the Antelope Valley, right? If we're talking about it as a region, who has the decision-making power to create tiny homes? who actually has a decision-making power in the Antelope Valley? And you can list them right here, and I'll copy and paste them, and I'll put them on this power map. And we're gonna practice this one first, okay? So who are the decision makers? Developers? Christine, could you share how you decided that they're decision makers and what kind of decisions do they have?
Okay, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not an expert in this topic, so I'm just assuming, like, at least where I live, like there's a lot of development happening, a lot of new housing and new like condos and apartments and all that stuff, right? And I'm assuming they have some type of power in determining like what type of housing they want to build based on like their profit that they're going to make. So that's what I mean by that.
So they do have a level of power, right? We want to identify, is their power actually a voting power, or is their power influential power? Which one? And it's not just to you, Christine, it's anybody on here that might want to comment, is developers. If we're using developers as an example on this power map, do they actually have voting power, or do they have influential power? Which one of those would we say?
Well, again, like I said, I'm not an expert, but I assume both, because they probably like, I mean, they have to partner with the city or whoever to get the permits and to get everything approved. And then they also possibly like lobby and vote and do that kind of stuff too.
Okay, so they might be both, right? And that's where when we do power mapping, we're gonna put developers at first, but when we do our deeper research, we're actually gonna name them, right? We're not gonna say just developers overall, we're actually gonna name people. And that's where you start deciding, is this person a decision maker or their influencer, right? But I just wanted to use that as an example. Let's say city mayors. Okay, Ruth, to your point, city mayor, do we have their name?
Yes, our famous Rex Paris in Lancaster, and for now, Steve Halfbauer in Palmdale until November.
Okay, so you're gonna have to put their names in the chat for me if you can, Ruth, because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually put them on a post-it. And again, the reason why I'm walking through this right now step by step, and just remind me of how much time I have, and I could cut it, but I just want us to start practicing this whole concept of power mapping, right? But let's say, all right, Catherine Barger, right? She's a decision maker for the county, right? She's one of our board of supervisors. So yes, so when we talk about power mapping, right, what I'm gonna do right here is I'm gonna actually get a post-it. And if you see right here on mine, my post-it for decision makers is green, right? So anytime we're gonna add a post-it to this power map, it's gonna be color coded. So I'm gonna click on my green, and I'm gonna put actually for this one, Rex, is it Rex Paris? Rex Paris.
Yes,
Paris. Paris. What is it?
P-E-R-R-I-S.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, so we're gonna use this as an example. Rex Paris, right? And this is a mayor of where?
Lancaster.
Lancaster. So let's say for this power map, we're identifying Lancaster, building tiny homes in Lancaster. Now, Rex Paris is the mayor. I'm gonna ask you on this power map, and you are gonna help me kind of place Rex Paris. How much decision-making power does Rex Paris have in terms of building tiny homes? How much decision-making power do they have?
A lot.
Yeah, very much. He can sway the entire council.
So are we putting Rex up here above the 4?
I mean, he's very powerful in Lancaster.
Okay, now let me ask you this. We know Rex Paris is up here, right? It's on the 4 level, right? Because they have decision-making power. Now, in terms of our goal and their goal, what side would Rex Paris land in terms of level of support or opposition for building tiny homes?
He's been against it. He's completely against the unhoused population.
Completely against.
Completely against. He has made very, very disturbing comments.
So
so he's completely against. He's one of those arm yourself. I'd rather be carried by trial by 12 than carried by 6.
Okay, so we would say that he's a champion against housing the population. Is he involved in being against? Like, is he just saying it for face value, or is he actively putting resources, coordinating with people?
Yeah, he has put resources. they were giving tickets, $500 to $1,000 tickets to the unhoused population. If we actually file through the ACLU, we file a lawsuit because of it to the city of Lancaster and the sheriff department for doing that.
And
so
Carlos,
yes.
there's a couple of people on this call. Sylvia is one of them, also Keith, that have worked with the homeless services as I have. And the other issue, it's not just the city council, it's also we've got a law enforcement that's a little, I don't know if Sylvia wanted to elaborate, but we've got a lot of forces. It's not just Rex, or it's not just the city council. It's just kind of like a NIMBY kind of, I think would be the best word. So
no, definitely, right? There's
there's
folks
a lot
that,
of forces. Yeah, there's a lot of, I think, things that are playing into it.
all right, really quickly, right? I don't want to focus too much time on Rex, right? But is Rex the only person that's making this decision, that's voting on this issue of tiny homes?
He's not the only one, but he's very powerful. I just attended the Smoke Free Coalition 2 weeks ago with Fran, and he swayed the whole. He swayed. I was going to say jury. He swayed. Been watching Johnny Depp. He swayed the whole. He swayed the whole council to act in a way that he wanted. He has
but
a lot
who are the other decision makers? Let's line them up really quick. In that city council, who are the other decision makers?
Marvin Christ, Ken Mann.
Marvin Christ, right? Now we're using this as an example, right? But for Marvin, where would Marvin land in terms of decision-making power, and then also level of support or opposition for tiny homes?
I don't know if Fran wanted to say anything, because I know Fran, you've watched and she's ran, so I don't know. Yeah, whatever Rex wants. It's I don't know.
I know, but
I think all the other council members would really fall under him. Like he would be the lead, and then they would all come under him.
Yeah.
okay, so we would move Marvin over here. Is this accurate?
Yes.
Okay, and you would say everybody in the city council would fall there, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
So then I'm gonna just put here, right? And we said city. I'm gonna put just city council, right? All right. So I'm gonna put city council, and I'm gonna put them over here. Now I'm gonna ask you all this, right? Who influences these folks right here? Who influences all these decision makers? Let's start. No, but this is important, right? This is a purpose of power mapping, is that it's gonna get tedious, right? And I'm sorry about this, Fran, that we're putting you through this. But again, the power map is a tool to visually see kind of what we have on the table, right? Sometimes when we do the work on a day-to-day, we kind of overstep things, or we kind of miss sight of something, right? And trust me, when you sit down and do this I do this for a retreat, a whole day where we start identifying these folks, right? And we even start asking people who are just the unusual suspects, people that we have not thought of that influence these folks. So I'm just curious, right? Who might
Carlos,
be?
I know a couple of people have put in the chat. So you've got investors, money, the ACLU. I also would think business people. I think Lancaster does care about that, because they've actively tried to do the Boulevard, which is Lancaster Boulevard, and bring people, businesses into Lancaster to try and help, obviously sales tax and what have you. So I think that is of an interest to them.
Okay.
Other people may have other ideas.
Donna, you said the ACLU. Could you elaborate a little bit on how the ACLU is an influencer with these folks?
Where is she?
She's off camera, so I'm not sure if she might have stepped
Okay.
away.
All right. Ruth, you said investors. Could you name some? Any that you might know?
I'm actually part of the ACLU, so I can answer both of those questions. So how we've been influenced is for, we did a lot of legal intake forms, and we brought that up to many city council meetings. And how we are an influence is we file a lawsuit, which one of them is getting, it's going to settling stages. So we can go ahead from the legal aspect, put pressure, as well as what we're doing with Catherine Barger. So we're working on that as well.
Is ACLU opposition to tiny homes, or is it support of tiny homes?
Our chapter is in support, which I'm the president of the chapter. It's in support of the tiny homes temporarily. And the only reason why overall we were against it is because it doesn't have bathrooms and kitchens. They still got to use a and a community bathroom.
Okay,
And that's the only reason.
would you say that ACLU, what level of influence do they have on decision makers? If you were to place yourself on this map now, first of all, are you all engaged in having tiny homes? Are you all involved in having tiny homes? Are you all a champion for having tiny homes? What
right
level of
now-
support would you all be, the ACLU? What level?
Well, right now I can tell you that the two organizations I represent, which is the ACLU and the Dolores Huerta Foundation, excuse me, I'm pushing for the tiny homes as temporarily, but I have come across tiny homes that actually have kitchen and bathrooms. And I have been studying and everything, where we can go ahead and have 100 homes in 3 months, which is going to be a fraction of what we pay in hotels and shelters, and have the wrapped around services as we develop the permanent housing.
Okay, right now I'm asking you to be at a 30,000 foot level. You're giving me a lot of details, and I'm gonna be nitty gritty about this, but like, where would you all fall in terms of support for tiny homes? That's what I'm asking. Is it something that you're kind of involved in,
No,
really involved in,
really
or
involved.
really involved? Would you say you're a champion? You're leading that movement?
Yes, I would say.
Okay, and again, what level of influence do you all feel that you have on decision makers? If the decision makers are Rex, Marvin, the city council, what level of influence would you all say? Is it a level 3? Are you all major influence? Or are you all just a 2, some on their radar of influence?
I think we're probably could say we're a 3.
A 3?
From the
Okay.
legal aspect, yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about investors. Where would investors fall on this? And we might need to be a little specific on what investors we're talking about.
The developers, especially right now, we see an increase on hotels. They're getting ready for the aerospace little community that's going to be happening soon. So I think that those investors are very influential because they can say, we're coming and we're going to develop here, but we notice that there is a crisis. Can we do something? So I think that if we can get them on board, they can go ahead and put contingencies, because especially in Lancaster, all of these hotels, we have quite a bit of
So where do
hotels
they stand right now? Because you're giving me details. You're saying we can move them.
I have no idea where they stand.
So-
I haven't approached them, and I don't know if anybody else has. But
So
that
we
is
don't,
with them.
so the developers, any developer in the Antelope Valley, we're not sure where they stand in terms of building tiny homes. Does anybody have any experience on that?
I know Keith and Sylvia have both been in the homeless industry, so you might, I don't know if they have anything to add.
LASA, which is the organization that runs all the funding for homeless programs in LA County, they haven't started that either. Really, a lot of it was about putting people in motels and hotels. And unfortunately, the hotels that we have here that are affordable for these kind of programs are the more seedy hotels, the more with drugs, prostitution, all that. So it hasn't been the smartest play in my view. But they've also taken over other apartments in other parts of LA, but in the Antelope Valley, there isn't any movement in terms of real affordable housing. You may have some that were built, but then you only have like 10 of the apartments that might be geared at affordable housing when you need at least 1,000. So there really isn't a lot of movement with LASA in terms of what they're doing with the communities.
So would we say that we just don't know too much about developers, where they stand on this? And we could name one like LASA. Would we say that, would we put them at neutral right now?
If that, yeah. Like and the thing is that even in other communities, like, like in Seattle or different other states where they do have a lot of the tiny home communities, those specific builders, they know that there's a lot of stipulation that comes with the coding, with the zoning in LA County. And so it keeps them, it's a barrier for them to like actually come here and offer these kinds of communities. It's not feasible for them.
Okay, and one thing, and I know Donna, you have your hand up, right? I'm gonna make this comment, then kick it over to you. If you see here on our chart, I put them in yellow. I mean, I'm sorry, orange, developers, right? Now I'm reading Matt's comment here and says developers stand wherever they can make money. So if that's the case, right, we'd move them over here, opposition, right? Because these are folks that are trying that, again, that's why this goal up here of profit is important, because this goal up here that we put for opposition helps guide where we place people, right? If profit is the goal on this side of the chart, and if Matt's correct, we would move developers on this side, right? But I'm hearing right now that we don't have enough information to place them somewhere, right? So this is where we would need to do more research, right? This is where we might need to assign a team member to say, hey, can you go out there and research developers where they've been a part of this whole conversation about homelessness, affordable housing, or even building tiny homes? Get me that research, and then we'll come back to the table and we'll say whether developers based on that research are allies. Do we put them on the left and turn them blue? Or do we move them to the right and turn them red, right? Pink for this one, right? But for right now, I'm gonna place them neutral. I'm gonna ask folks, so we might not know where they stand in opposition or support, but how much influence do these developers have in building tiny homes? How much influence do they have? Are they a 2? Are they a 3? Or are they getting closer to having as much influence as decision makers? Where might we place them, at least on this axis? Developers.
I would say a 3.5.
3.5, okay? So I'll place them right here. But again, we still don't know if they're to the left or they're to the right. So this is where we're gonna need to do more research. And that's why I put them in orange, because they're unorganized, right? We don't know what side they stand on. They're still unorganized. We still have the opportunity to leverage them, right? To kind of pressure them to a certain extent. So that's where we'll place it here, okay? Now, again, this whole process of power mapping is a very tedious process. And if I were to sit down with you for about over an hour to 3 hours, we would list everybody on here, right? We would list all the decision makers. We would list all the influencers to the decision makers, be it they be opposition or allies. And then what I would do is, once we list everybody, I would walk you through how to research these people, what websites to go to, who to talk to in your networks to get more, like, you know, gossip, chisme, research, all that good stuff is important, right? Because once we get that research, we could say, oh, you know what? Matt went out there and researched these developers. They're in, you know, they're in Rex's pocket. So not only are we gonna move them over here, right? But they're pretty much opposition. So they're gonna turn red, right? And we would move the developers there, right? And so the last part that we would do, once all these people are placed in the right spot, we would then start making connections, right? I would be able to draw an arrow on this power map and say, you know what? You know, these developers here are really just hanging out with Rex Paris. And so we're gonna draw a circle around them. And pretty much what I would tell folks is, how could we pressure these developers, right? How could we find who influences the developers, right? To then really influence Rex Paris, right? So we would get through a level of just strategy and decision making, right? And so that's kind of like the natural process of power mapping. But at least for this moment right here, I wanted to practice some of these things, right? I'm gonna share this Jamboard with you all. If anybody's really interested in addressing this issue of homelessness and really building out tiny homes, you know, we're more than welcome to help folks walk through this process. And you could just continue to build off this short power map that we did right here. But I'm gonna just take a step back for right now. If there's any questions or thoughts that we have, because what we did today is pretty much like the second level, right? The first level is just kind of learning how to do a power map and how to use it. The second part is kind of starting to identify stakeholders like we did here. And then the third part was going to be to research and create strategy to do campaigns or action items and implement that over a timeline, right? So that's kind of the natural process that we do with this power mapping activity. But yeah, just thoughts or questions that folks might have.
Hi, so I'm going to put my CPA hat on for a second.
Yeah.
And I'm agreeing that developers need to make a profit. I'm agreeing that there is a lot of back-end deals going on. But I also believe, as a CPA with construction experiences, and I've been at this job for 36 years, that you can do good and do well. So it really comes down to a different approach with the developers. and engaging our chambers of commerce, our building industry association, figuring out their break even and how we're going to get to it. So I just, because I have that hat as well as my social services hat, I would approach this a completely different way, because we've been at this, as they've all said, for several years. And without the tax credits, without making this make sense, you can't make the developers build. So I know that's not how we've normally skewed, but I can say, and I appreciate Sylvia's brave comment, what we've been doing and throwing our people into hotels with pimps and drugs and everything else just truly isn't working. So I hate to put a wrench in it, but I think we can shift the developers over to the other side and find a way to make this work through a back door, through the BIA, through the Chamber of Commerce, because we need those affordable housing tax credits and we need those builder incentives, and they're not going to build without it. And you can say that would make them evil, but I'm going to go on that it's capitalism, and doing good and doing well can often go together. So I'm going to fight the trend on your map and ask that you shift them to possible collaborators, because if they can make money, they would be more than happy to do it. And perhaps we can engage. I know several engineers and architects that we could engage to tell us the magic number to make a developer break even on affordable housing. Maybe we can hit it at another way. It's just a thought.
No, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, Donna, I think that's logical. I mean, we want to think that it's altruistic, but it's money. It's money, and people are coming in here for a reason. They may be altruistic on one side, but it's money.
And you know what? And I really appreciate this conversation, because I think it really is hearing everybody's vision and experience, right? Like what we're saying comes from the experience that we've seen or been through. And I think what this is going to lead us to, and Carlos, you're not going to get away from us that easily, is that we're going to bring you back. And I think what we need to really look at is create a workshop day for just this, and really bring in, everybody here, bring in more people that we know would be really vital to this conversation, and really start having this, and then coming up with ideas, like what Donna's saying, is then how it's not just, I know we need to reach out, but now how are we doing it, and what our message is going to be? I think it's going to be vital. So Carlos, thank you so much for that. I think it's going to be, this is going to be ongoing work. This is not just a one-time thing.
One quick point though,
Sure.
I appreciate your comment, Donna, because you're exactly right? And that's the purpose of the power map. I always tell folks is when we organize and mobilize and collaborate, we assume that people have the same understanding that we do about stakeholders, right? We assume, okay, they know that these folks are, yes, for profit, but we could move them. And that's not the case. Not everybody agrees or knows that stuff, right? That's why we have to kind of put this out visually like we did today, right? And I put the developers on this side, and I appreciate, Donna, that you said, no, I'm going to go against a trend. And we need your voice in this process, right? Because it's like I tell folks about choosing food. When somebody says, what do you all want to eat? Nobody really says anything. Nobody's really giving a suggestion, right? Nobody's really moving the conversation. So you need that first person to say, oh, I want pizza. Because then once you know what's going to happen after that, everybody tears up what they say. Oh, I don't want pizza, I want this. That's when people start making decisions. And that's kind of what the power map is. You're placing somebody on a map and you're asking the room, is this accurate where they belong? And the room's going to tell you, no, move them over here or do this, right? And then second thing, right, is we have to make sure to understand that when we do power mapping, it's not just saying developers. Once we sit down, we have to name the developers, right? Because there's so many different developers. There's community land trust, there's foundations, right? There's corporate developers. So we have to name them explicitly, because some of them are on the other side, some of them are on the right. So it's not just what we did today is very surface level in terms of power mapping, but we see how we were able to engage in this conversation just by the small little practice that we did. Imagine doing a retreat. Imagine doing a 3-hour session for this power map, how deep we would be able to go in level of understanding stakeholders and pretty much strategy, right? So I do appreciate this conversation, and I'm more than willing, like I said, Sylvia, to support you all with this process.
Fran,
Carlos,
go ahead, Fran.
oh, thank you. This is my opinion now. The Board of Supervisors have put a group together uh, of high authority on homelessness and so forth. But my thing is, we have all these committees all saying something, but I have not yet seen progress in the groups that say, well, we can change this, but they say they can change it, but they don't do anything about it. All this is talk. And that's why I don't say much about anything, because I listen and I hear. And what the thing of it is if I myself will go with a committee that's going to do something, not just sit there and talk about it and say, well, this could happen and that could happen. Sure, it could happen, but who's going to do it? Somebody has to get out there and we have to get it done. And that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for that, friend.
Thank you, Fran. Appreciate that. Darrell, you want to kick in?
Yeah, it was such a great dialogue. I didn't want to interrupt because it was really good. And, you know, it's leading into, in fact, the last comment I want to read is from Dr. Patty, who I'm going to bring up in a few seconds here. She says, this really leads to the foundation to finding ways to shift power as well and set. So, yeah, it sparked a conversation, and we have to start somewhere. And Donna, thank you so much for what you said, because it's about solutions. And Fran, yes, you absolutely, because we got to be about it, not just talk about it, but be about it. Don't sing it, bring it. So that's how we have to approach and this situation. And thank you, Carlos. I love a 3-day retreat idea. I mean, a 3-hour retreat, not 3 days, 3 hours. I'm not going no place for 3 days, but 3 hours, yes. So that leads me, hold on just a second. I got something to give y'all. I'm sharing my screen with you. Right now, we have our time of announcements, but we have a very specific announcement, and Dr. Patty is going to come up, Patty Ramirez, the founder and executive director of KLBRI, Community Heart Academy. And Patty is going to share some information with us. Again, Patty, thank you for your comment in the chat. It was so on point. And I'm going to leave it with that. I'm going to stop sharing in case you need to share something from your side.
I want to give just a little background on Dr. Ramirez.
Yeah.
First of all, we're so glad and thankful that she could be here with us. Dr. Patty Ramirez, DSW, MSW, is the founder and executive director of the KLBRI, where she is developing the Leading with Heart model, a healing leadership methodology that proposes a process for healing, transformation, and liberation. Dr. Patty believes that reimagining how we heal and lead will increase sustainability of social justice leaders, organizations, and social justice movements. For nearly a decade, Dr. Patty has dedicated her work to serving immigrant victims of crimes and justice-impacted folks. Dr. Patty's experience ranges from direct service provision, violence prevention, criminal justice policy advocacy, program and curriculum development, and organizational development. She is also a founding member of the LA County Crime Victims Advisory Board. Dr. Ramirez is also the creator of her own micro enterprise, Wild Luna Botanicals, a self-care and wellness lifestyle brand where healing and brujita magic come together. Dr. Patty Ramirez is committed to the vision of a collective healing and breaking down barriers that discredits the voice and thought leadership of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And we are really pleased to be able to partner with Dr. Ramirez and the KLBRI Foundation to really bring an opportunity for our community to go through a process of an academy where we're going to learn and we're going to work together to do some of this amazing work that Dr. Ramirez does. And with that, I'll pass it over to Dr. Ramirez to give us a little bit of a breakdown as to what we want to do.
Yes, thank you so much, Sylvia, for that beautiful, warm introduction. My heart is so full. I also just want to uplift all of the speakers today and the trainings. Power mapping is beautiful. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I love that I get to follow the plática, the conversation, with really looking at the ways in which power manifests in our communities and the ways that we can have a collective centered process to get to the heart of, some of the wounding that our communities face, and transform that into collective healing. But before I share all about, the Community Heart Academy, I just want to invite everyone that is here with us, to take a moment. I know you've been hearing from everything from data to redistricting to power mapping to you all experienced everything, and so I want to normalize that it can be really hard to hold all of this. So if this feels good for you and accessible, I invite you to either close your eyes or adopt a sleepy gaze, and we're just going to breathe together. It's not going to be very long, just a minute of breathing and allowing our bodies to become soft. So please adjust your bodies however you feel called. You are the expert of your own experience, so I might guide you and provide some prompts, but I invite you to just listen to your own intuition and your own embodied wisdom. So you can close your eyes if this feels safe, or you can adopt a sleepy gaze. I invite you to shift your shoulders. Maybe you have them up to your ears. I wonder what it would be like to bring them down. I invite you to maybe roll your neck. Allow yourself to stretch. And at this moment, just follow your own pace of breathing. For some of us, we might be just looking straight at a Zoom video all day. And so allowing movement and stretching can be really supportive. And now I'm going to invite you all to breathe as a collective. So I'm going to prompt you to breathe in for 4 seconds, to hold, and then to release for 6 seconds. Please follow your own intuition. Some of us may need to breathe for a shorter amount of time. So at this moment, if you feel ready, I invite us to breathe in for 2, 3, 4. Now hold, 2, 3, 4, and release. 3, 4, 5, 6. Feel free to shake it out, shake your limbs. Go ahead and take another breath. We're going to do 2 more together. So I invite us to take a breath in and inhale in. 2, 3, 4. Now hold. 2, 3, 4, and release. 3, 4, 5, 6. So again, shake it out. Let things flow through your body. And one last time together. So I invite us to breathe in again. Inhale in, 2, 3, 4. Now hold, 2, 3, 4, and release. 3, 4, 5, 6. And when you're ready, shake it out, shift your body. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to this space that we are sharing. Thank you all. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. 1 second. Let's see. Darrell, can you give me access again? For some reason, it doesn't let me.
Yeah, give me 1 second, Dr. Patty.
No worries. I know I needed that breath, so thank you so much for breathing with me.
Okay, you should have it again.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So, first and foremost, once again, thank you. I feel like, Sylvia and I have been having these conversations since earlier in the year. And so this offering has been a labor of love that we have been talking about and building and co-creating. So for Colibri, this is the Community Heart Project, but we will be launching the Community Heart Academy with Best Start. And so I'm excited to share a little bit more about that. We don't have too much information in terms of like the presentation time, so I just want to let you know it might take about 10 minutes or so, just for predictability purposes. A little bit about Colibri. So I am Dr. Patty Ramirez. I am joined by my MSW student consultant here, Dr. Krista, and she is right here in the chat as well. She will be making note of any questions or comments that surface from you all so that we can circle back. I am the founder of Colibri, which is a grassroots organization committed to racial healing, capacity building, and healing-centered leadership development. Colibri, spelled KLBRI, is actually a play on words to colibri in Spanish, which means hummingbird. Hummingbirds are the healers. And so with that, I just wanted to share a little bit about that, the grounding of Colibri. We are grounded in traditional and cultural healing practices, and we believe that communities have inherent wisdom, and so our practice is to really lean into that collective wisdom. Community Heart is a collective-centered journey that leans on the collective wisdom of community stakeholders, community residents, and organizations to truly get to the heart of collective wounds. And I know I shared this a little bit before I started. And the main goal is for us to build our collective capacity to address root challenges of advancing racial equity, racial healing, but ultimately to support you all in improving outcomes in the community, right? And so we're just really excited to get to do this work with you all. And so we're building an inaugural cohort, which is the Community Heart Academy, to kick off this collective center journey. So this cohort would be made up of Best Start staff, stakeholders, and community members. We truly believe this has to be grounded in the community. And the reason why our process is collective centered and really engages a collaborative process is because this is our way of centering consent. We believe, again, that communities hold wisdom and that participants would have wisdom around their collective and individual needs. So once we all consent to the experience, we will move into the capacity building, which is the curriculum. So the Community Heart curriculum is a culturally responsive curriculum. It will be co-created in partnership with the cohort, and it would be implemented over a 6-month period with different themes, and I'll share a little bit more around the themes and what are some of the modules that you might experience. We use a dialectic process that includes somatic healing, expressive arts, and this would all happen virtually because we are still in a global health pandemic and we want to ensure that everyone feels safe. This also would be coupled with a healing-centered leadership development and cultural humility workshops. And all participants would have access to holistic wellness and mental health services via Latinx therapy. So we would be able to coordinate either individual or group therapy sessions because although this work can be therapeutic, it is not therapy. So we want to make sure that we have the support needed when things surface, when tenderness surfaces for folks. We also will include self-care packages and workshop supplies as part of your participation, with the ultimate goal to bring you all together to vision and plan how can we unleash the power of Best Start, stakeholders, and community resident leaders. And so you might be wondering, okay, so how long is this commitment? Like, what am I signing up for? Like, this sounds amazing. I'm sure you all are thinking that. This is a 6-month journey. We have the dates for the first part of the journey. Like I mentioned, this is collective centered and it requires consensus building. So the first 3 sessions, which are outlined under proposal development, are really to hear about some of the narratives that are alive for the community in Antelope Valley. And from your work and intentions, we will develop a proposed curriculum journey, and you will get to consent to the curriculum. We anticipate the curriculum taking place between August and November, with weekly sessions every Friday from 2 to 5. The curriculum portion would be a duration of 12 weeks weekly, while the proposal development would be over the span of 6 weeks, but it would be bi-weekly. So here you see, and we're going to have a community facing handout that you can read all of this information and get additional questions. So you might be wondering, okay, what are the curriculum themes? So these are just some of the curriculum themes and some of the modules that you might experience through each session and theme. As you can see, we talk a lot about safety and identity and how that shows up interpersonally within our work in our community. We really focus on uncovering our strengths. This is first and foremost a strengths-based, healing-centered process. So we don't want to build kinship around trauma, rather around healing and resilience. This also includes themes around compassionate accountability, which is really important, especially when harm and conflict surfaces. So this whole process will be one where folks will not only learn about themselves, but they will also learn about one another and deepen their own practice with one another, so that we can truly build forward and reimagine what it looks like to do this work here in our community. So I know I shared a lot. We promise we will follow up with a handout so that you can read and spend more time digesting what the Community Heart Academy will look like. It will also include the dates and an Eventbrite link. So at this point, I wanted to just make space for any questions or comments that you may have, and I'll just stop sharing so we can all see each other. And you can write them on the chat, or you can unmute yourself.
I do want to start off by saying again, thank you for coming on this journey with us, Dr. Patty. It's something that's different. It isn't the same kind of academies we see normally, but I think that it's going to be a path for us to be really able to look at things that are affecting our community, giving us tools to have better conversations within our community, with our community members. And I think it even goes back a little bit to what even Carlos was saying in terms of like, how do we address this? Who do we address this? We want to have these tools on being clear in our messaging of what we want to change or to better in our community. So I'm excited about this.
Yes, thank you for naming that. And also like what does it look like to build trust, right? I think it's such a key a key practice, the one that is required not only to have these conversations around power, but also the conversations around how do we shift it. And for many, the foundation is trust. Building trust and building our skill set and our capacity to sit in discomfort, to hold space and complexity, especially because we're dealing with all of these very important and critical issues that are impacting our communities. So thank you, Sylvia, for naming that. And again, we welcome any questions or comments or anything else that feels alive for you all.
All right.
And like we said, we do have this recording if anybody wants to come back and look at it and get a better a reminder of it. But we will be sharing all this information on with everybody who signed in, and it'll go out in our regular email blast as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Patty, and for that information. We're going to continue moving on. Let me share my screen with you. And it is time for our announcements. During this time, I'm sorry, just one more thing. Our announcements, we have several things that are coming up in the month of June. These again will be sent to you. If you have not signed in, please sign in the chat box. All of the flyers again will be sent and shared with you. As Sylvia stated, we will be taping this. This is being taped, so you'll be able to access the tapes to go through this. We have a Father's Day event that will be taking place June 25th at our AVPH. So all dads, please stay tuned. Your day is coming up, so we want to celebrate you. We also have a training that Best Start will be sponsoring, our emotional training for parents and providers. This will take place on 2 days, June the 28th from 5 to 6:30, as well as June 30th, 10 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. So please stay tuned for that. You can sign up for that, and we encourage you to do so.
Can I add just a little bit on that one? Go back if you can, Darrell. Sorry. Just to give a little background on the wellness. Basically, what they're trying to establish is a new a platform where people can come and get information on. It's set up by the maternal mental health program, but it really is about setting up a platform where people can go in and get information on what resources there are in the Antelope Valley in terms of for wellness, for mental health, for especially women who are pregnant or families that are experiencing a pregnancy or have young children. And what this is that it's going to also then give the opportunity for residents and stakeholders to also put in information. So if you know of a resource or you're part of an organization that provides some kind of resource for this, you're going to be able to be part of this platform. And one of the things is that for the families that attend this, they will, if they participate and are part of this, they will get a $25 gift card. So we really encourage a lot of our young families, a lot of our resource programs to really take part in this.
Okay. Thank you, Sylvia. Also, we have coming up, you should be noting, the Devil's Punch Bowl Nature Center has a replacement planning project that will be taking place throughout the summer, June, July, and August. This is something that will help with our Antelope Valley, our desert community, and they will have fun workshops. So if you have children, young adults, this is a fun project that's taking place in our valley. At our next regional meeting, we have a guest speaker, Lily Trujillo. She will be coming and sharing on the effects of speed racing. And we know we need that in our Antelope Valley. We definitely need to talk about that. So please join us for our next Antelope Valley regional meeting. And she will be our guest speaker. I'm going to stop sharing right now, and I'm going to ask Stephanie if she would please share the next flyer for Tracy LaMonica, our own Tracy LaMonica.
Thank you,
Go ahead,
Darrell.
Tracy.
So I know how people say, oh, are these your, these are your peeps, or these are the people that you relate to, chunky versus creamy peanut butter, chunky in the house. But these are my peeps. So if you guys are interested in policy, if you're interested in delving into, if you're interested in hearing about, what's going on in the AV, this is for you. And I know Fran is signed up. I know I've got some people here that are signed up. I'm not sure if Andy's still with us. So this is the Policy Leadership Academy. So this is a 12-week course. It is meeting every Tuesday from 9 a.m. It's starting in August. So it's going to start the first week of August, going to go through till mid-October. I know I'm super excited. I just locked down Miss Dolores Huerta again. She spoke at our Policy Academy 1. She was so moving. So just really, it's nice to have a living legend. So we are having her back. So I just locked her in yesterday. But again, this is something that if you're interested in, please sign up. Again, as Darrell mentioned, all of the items that we're sharing with you today will be in that packet. You can also email me. So again, if that's of an interest to you. Also, we're starting, this is kind of in conjunction, but you don't have to be a part of the Academy. We're starting our policy committee. And that's really interesting because it kind of delves into what Carlos was talking about, what homelessness, a lot of you guys, I know most of everyone who's on the call today, you're living in the AV, you're concerned about the AV, we want to better the AV. So this is something that if it's of an interest to you, I really urge you to either contact me, get a hold of me. We're going to be starting the committee, and we're really going to take the kind of the talking, the groundwork, the foundation, and really what's the next step. We want to put it into practice. And so if that's of an interest to you, I really urge you to sign up for the committee and really kind of next steps, like how can we better the AV? And, Fran and some other people here know we were a part of the Smoke-Free Coalition. The Smoke-Free Coalition was in conjunction with ABPH, and their sole goal was to turn the parks and public spaces into a smoke-free. We got it signed with Palmdale. Now we're working on Lancaster, and we're meeting.
We got it signed in Lancaster too.
Yeah, we're meeting with them on June 14th. That's the kind of thing we want to work on. If there's something of interest to you and you think, hey, the AV really needs to be doing something about it, then that's for you. So I urge you again, if you haven't signed up for the Academy, or if that's too much for you, or you don't want to sign up for a 12-week, no problem. But I would urge you to even think about the committee, because again, this is where we really are going to look at turning that in policy into actual practice and moving forward some initiatives. And it's going to be on you guys. Whatever you think is the way we're going to go, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about it, and then we're going to see how can we move that needle forward. So I'm excited. Maybe nobody else, but I'm excited. I think this is what I live for. I love this kind of stuff. I know I'm nerdy, but again, if that's of an interest to you, I will put my email in the chat. And thank you so much for joining us today, Darrell.
Tracy, you are not a nerd.
No, you're not.
Not a nerd. You got this, girl. You got this. So yeah, we're going to continue on. Let me finish. I'm going to share my screen with you again. As we come to the conclusion of this, I want you to note that what Tracy just mentioned, you can join us on our group site as we set that up for our PLA, our members who want to be a part of that. Also, we have, one more, go back. Follow us. Now, we did, I love that our partners from AVPH did a small snippet and a play or a movie on how to follow us on our QR code. But you can follow us, just take a picture of our QR code. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. The video today will be on YouTube. We upload it. So you can find out about our Best Start. You can follow us, but just take a picture of our QR code, our newfangled stuff. And again, I want to say thank you so much for following us today, being with us. You could have been somewhere else this morning, but I'm so glad you joined us for our stakeholders convening. If this is your first time joining us, I'm glad you stayed to the end. I want to encourage you to come back to our regional meeting that will be taking place on the 16th of June. And that information and the link will be sent out. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. If you have any comments, feel free to give us a thumbs up or just come off of mute and say what you need to say. And then we're going to say, have a great day to everybody.
I have a question, Darrell.
Hi, Maria, you do. What's your question?
Yeah, I have a question for Tracy.
Uh-huh.
You know, Policy Leadership Academy, is that the same one like we have, the first cohort, or is that the continuation of it?
No, so each cohort is a standalone. So we actually have different speakers this time, a couple of different speakers. And this is in the morning now, as opposed to the other one that was in the evening. So some of the speakers are the same, some have changed, but each cohort is a standalone. So it's not a continuation. This is a new cohort. I think everybody is fairly new. I don't think I have any repeat people that are coming back. So yeah, bye, Jessica. So yeah, so if you'd like to sign up, you know how to reach, you know how to reach me. So yes, shoot me out an email and I'll send you the sign in.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, Tess.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for joining
Thank
us
you.
today. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
Great day. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Have a great day.